Episode 42 of the Star Wars Newsnet's Timeline Show. It's time, Luke. Episode 42, out of Young Jedi Adventures, into the comic world here as we are back into phase one of the High Republic, initiative here. And I'm pretty excited. We're talking about Monsters of Temple Peak. And not to gloss over this episode, because I am excited, but I'm excited for what this means for the future of the Timeline Show. So we have this episode that is coming out this weekend. And then our next episode, we're actually usually do like one episode a week. But this week is going to be this episode that comes out the weekend. And then we have our Cavan Scott interview that's going to come out probably like Tuesday morning, where we talk everything Rising Storm, where he kind of gives us some secret nuggets of High Republic information that we didn't know, what it was like working with everyone. We get to know Cavan a little bit more in the Star Wars universe. So that's going to be really exciting. And then we jump into some more comics novels for the High Republic. And it truly feels like we're at a turning point. Once we finish Monster of Temple Peak today, Cavan Scott interview, where the High Republic is ramped up and we're done with like these intro stories, because we've done kind of the intro for the Marvel run. We've done the intro for the Jedi Adventure, or what is it called? Jedi High Republic Adventures. Yeah, it's like the High Republic Adventures. We'll be two novels in. Like, we're done with the, all right, this is the setup, and now we are going to be in these action-packed books for the most part as we round out the rest of phase one. And then before we know it, we're going to be on phase 3, wrapping up the High Republic this summer. And it's going to be this crazy journey that we've been on. And I'm really excited that we're entering into this phase. Granted, Luke, I know that you saw the Young Jedi Adventures trailer for season 2. And we both are like, yes, Young Jedi Adventures. And we both went, all right, here we go. Another month of Young Jedi Adventures podcasting. Here we go.
Forced myself to lock in for that one. It's going to be good.
It will be. So we joke a lot about Young Jedi Adventures because we do truly love Young Jedi Adventures. It's just when you are only talking about that on the weekends for 2 months, it can kind of reach a breaking point,
That's fair. It's a good show. It's great for its target audience, but sometimes when you're spending 2 months in a row in anything, even if somehow there was like a comic run where we did 2 months straight of it, like it, no matter how good it is, it just gets a little stale after a little while. So that's all it is. We love that show. That's all it is.
Some housekeeping things before we get into Monsters of Temple Peak. Like I mentioned before, you're listening to this episode right now, episode 42. Episode 43 will be a landmark episode for the Timeline Show, as we have our first Star Wars author coming on the Timeline Show specifically. We've talked with Star Wars authors before at Star Wars Newsnet many times, but the first one we have specifically for the Timeline Show. So that's exciting to have like a landmark episode like that. And then for us too, and we mentioned this to Cavan in our interview, how us getting into Star Wars books together, we each kind of have read different things on our own, but for us getting into it together, Count Dooku Jedi Lost by Cavan Scott was the first one we read together. So it was kind of a fun moment for the two of us. It's a special time. I just want to reflect on that. But housekeeping, there's those 2 things coming out. Make sure you guys are liking and subscribing the channel. Follow us on Apple and Spotify. Please leave the little review, because I know a lot of you go back and forth on those. So do that for us. Leave a little 5-star review, just so that way it helps us, with our Apple, Spotify content. And then also the live show Thursday nights. We have Star Wars Newsnet Live. Join us every 10 o'clock Eastern time for Star Wars Newsnet Live. We have a couple of fun announcements too with the early week pods. We now have, I feel like we have a pretty straight schedule moving forward, where we'll have like 1 episode a month early in the week, where it's just going to be something topical, Star Wars, what's going on. Once a month, I'll have my Star Wars month recap with Paul. And then we're going to start doing something beyond Star Wars with Miguel once a month. Me and Miguel are going to sit down. I'm going to sit down with Miguel, and we're going to have this month at the movies. And we're just going to talk about what movies we liked, didn't like, breaking down even some of the drama around film and everything that goes on in Hollywood and in this movie sphere. So I'm excited for that. Start doing that once a month as well. And then hopefully Andor trailer comes out. I want to start doing some super chill we're not going to these highly edited. Don't have time for that with being a teacher and grad school student, but just some short, chill, videos every once in a while for you too, breaking down like Andor trailers, things like that, just talking about what we're most excited for. So all those things, housekeeping out of the way. Luke, we just got done doing our panel at MegaCon talking about books and comics with people, and that was a blast. So I just wanted to get your quick synopsis on how that went with you, and then we'll talk about Monster of Temple Peak.
That was a ton of fun because, at my tenure on this timeline show, we've been talking a lot about Young Jedi Adventures and a little bit of comics here, a little bit of books there, but it was a lot of fun to have 45 minutes carved out where we got to interact with a room of people that really wanted to hear what we were saying. We were talking about not only the High Republic, but your entire timeline that you see on the bottom of the screen. We're talking about all these books and comics that take place all throughout Star Wars. It was a ton of fun, just to talk about the different ways that they kind of weave together the books and comics do, but also that the way that that Star Wars treats its books and comics, so that there's really good stories that connect movies, or there's really good stories that fill in gaps that maybe you thought you wanted in the movies that maybe you thought they weren't explained. So it was kind of fun to give that revelation to people who were wanting more from Star Wars, and the thing that they're looking for does exist. It's in a book or it's in a comic. And so I felt like people got to walk away knowing, you know what? I've always been asking this question. The answer is actually out there. I can go find it. So it was just a lot of fun to like give people resources, really. That's what I loved.
Yes, I feel like we were able to be a resource for every person there because between the two of us, we kind of have the entire book comic sphere on lock for the most part, in terms of
very close to everything.
understanding what's going on, all of those things.
Yeah.
And so the best part to me was we were giving away our prizes. We were engaging with them on, what we had decided were the essential pieces of novels and comics in each different era of Star Wars. But I loved at the end being able to just draw some of the characters that they submitted beforehand of, I would like to know more about this character in terms of what stories are available. And then to be able to pick that out, have a conversation with them and say, hey, you wrote Jango Fett down. Ironically, there is a Jango Fett, comic run that happened this last year. It's like, you can go check that out right here. Or, okay, you wrote down Obi-Wan Kenobi. Well, I know that you may be thinking, because we had a couple of Kenobi things in the presentation, but they were interested in what's Obi-Wan Kenobi's story as an apprentice, but not necessarily super Qui-Gon focused as well. And we were able to tell them, we have this book called Padawan that is literally an Obi-Wan story without Qui-Gon pretty much being present in the entirety of the book. And so I loved little moments like that where we were able to weave together different stories. And I thought that was a lot of fun, just being able to take a character and be like, here's where you go. And them to be excited about that. The community around Star Wars books and comics is a niche community, but it's a very passionate community.
Yeah.
And I love too that there was a whole family that was there, and the dad was asking questions about Palpatine while the daughter's asking questions about Dr. Aphra, and we're able to have conversations with both of them about it. And so I thought that was fun. Loved being able to do that. Hope we can do that again next year and just find ways to keep growing that community, make it bigger and better every single year.
Absolutely. I would love to do that. I would love to do it again next year and double the amount of people that come, or put in double the amount of time to make it an even better presentation. So I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So here we go. We're in the High Republic, 231 BBY here, 232 231 BBY here.
231.
We're doing Monsters of Temple at Temple Peak, the Monster of Temple Peak, issues 1 through 4, just a little mini series run with Ty York. And this is our introduction to Ty York, post-introduction to Ty York, because I believe this comic run came out after we meet her in The Rising Storm. So we have this interesting character of former Jedi, now lightsaber for hire, basically, this mercenary, and was once a Jedi. And we kind of get the backstory here of how she probably left the Jedi Order and why, and then why she's so sensitive about that. And we kind of get a glimpse into this character that doesn't trust easily, wants to work alone, doesn't want to open herself up to people. And there's little nuggets from her character in The Rising Storm of not connecting with animals, not connecting with people. And we see threads of that here in this book that has, or this comic book that has payoff in the novel. And then we, get payoff here from learning about her if you read the novel first. So if you're going in timeline order, you can read this and then go in The Rising Storm and have a really cool understanding of this character. But if you want to read The Rising Storm first and then go back and read this comic, you get like the payoff of having already met her. So I love the way sometimes Star Wars is able to thread, both worlds together. If you have your timeline people, then you have your release order people. And this really just benefits both sides of that camp.
Yeah. Either way you look at it, you're going to have a fun time with it. Because, the book references some things that do get touched on here, and it answers a few things in this comic run. But also, I can imagine it'd be fun to read this first, and then she pops up in The Rising Storm for you, and you go, "Oh, I know this character. Oh, this is very cool." So, not my experience. I read the book first, and then the comic. But I imagine if you read the comic first, you're gonna have a really good time. It's gonna be really fun to get to know the backstory, and then you get the full story with her. So it's either way, you're going to be rocking.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and get into the story. We start off, Ty York. I'm not going to do like a chapter by chapter. That's what they call it. Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4 for here. I'm not going to do a chapter by chapter breakdown. What I kind of want to do here is just give a brief synopsis of the entire story. And then we just kind of pickpocket around, or pickpocket. That's not the right frame. Ping pong around. I think it's what I was looking for. Ping pong around and pick like the points that we really want to talk about, within our, each of our.
Treating it more like a book, honestly.
Yes. And I think that's the best way to do it, especially since this isn't like a continuation arc of like when we did High Republic Adventures and it's like a big, long 20, issue spread of a story. This is just a contained 4 issues. Boom. So Ty York, Saber for hire. She's on another planet. She's hunting a Gundark, and she has to capture this alive to give to this guy named, and I wrote his name down, Tribal Balgo, and he is apparently some illegal animal trafficker, and the Jedi are after him. She kills the Gundark instead of bringing him alive because this kid named Druin is following her around because he's in awe of her, thinks she's a Jedi, wants to watch her work. She's a monster hunter. I mean, I kind of imagine myself being this person wanting to follow the master, this legend that I've heard about. And so basically the 2 of them have this whole, like, I saved you, you ruined my job. And then Ty has to escape because Balgo wants to capture her because she killed the Gundark, was going to kill her. But the Jedi are showing up looking for him. Ty makes sure she's not sensed by the Jedi because she is a former Jedi. She leaves. She needs a job. So they go to Loreth. And Loreth, there's these people on Loreth. The guy's name is
Leighton.
Leighton, yes, thank you. This guy named Leighton is leading this group of people, and there's this creature called Gretalax that is terrorizing their community. And so he wants to essentially hire Ty, go kill this, bring me its head, and we're good. Throughout this journey, Ty discovers that the Gretalax is actually 2 creatures, the Greta and the Lax, and the townspeople have kidnapped and stolen the other half of the creature, its mate, and realizes the only reason the Gretalax had attacked was because they had, captured one of its own. And the child, her name is Pella, that is injured in this attack and basically was trying to keep them from doing this. And it was Leighton's fault that this happened. And there's a big confrontation. Ty is trying to make sure that the Gretalax is put back together, that the mates can come back together. Leighton obviously doesn't want that to happen. They're just trying to kill this creature for its horns and the valuable potion and properties that they can concoct from the minerals inside of the horns to, I guess, boost themselves and give themselves some level of power is what this potion does. And reminded me a little bit. We'll talk about some of the real world parallels there with some of that, but really fascinating. And essentially, Ty and gets captured, but her pal Druin, who stows away aboard her ship and ends up being her little sidekick, helps her escape. And they use these giant rock spiders to help, and they overthrow Leighton and
Yeah.
capture him, and they let the creature get back together. The creature heals the child. Ty is a hero, but she leaves, and the community's ever thankful for her. That's pretty much the story.
Yeah.
However, there's also flashbacks of Ty with her friend Claudius, Claudius, who is another Padawan at the time. And this is when she's with the Jedi. She has a master, and Claudius and her go and they find this like Zepho temple, essentially. And Claudius is touching things he probably shouldn't be messing with, and gets possessed by some sort of force. What is it, like some force essence of some kind
Yeah,
that
some kind of force essence entity, some kind.
entity the cultists left behind. And ultimately they fight each other because Claudius is possessed by this, and Ty accidentally kills her best friend. And we're led to
Kind
believe
of
at that
forced
point.
to.
Right, and it was definitely an accident. I mean, she's not even trying to kill him. And then eventually we're guessing that's why she leaves, and that's how it kind of ends, is her going off on her own again with her droid looking for their next mission. And Luke, so that's essentially the synopsis here. What were your big takeaways of this 4-issue run in terms of what did you appreciate most about Tyurek the character? And then what was like the lore aspect that you were most drawn to?
I know that the lore aspect was interesting. I'll go with that one first because this Yalo shrine, um, Teradine is messing around with this, and this character of Claudius Teradine is mentioned in his book, Cavan Scott's book, Dooku Jedi Lost. It's something that Dooku finds. It's something that him and Sifo Dyas find, and they are rummaging through it, and they're seeing that this person from 200 years ago messed with the dark side, or was just at least an unruly like Jedi who was just
Right.
very, very rambunctious, such a teenager. So I liked that. That was kind of a point of interest in that 2019 novel, that audio drama, and for that to come back up here and like it gets fully but like explained of like what is going on here, who this person is. I liked that lore aspect of like him, and also the Yalo are this force cult that is not the Jedi. They also are force users. They're not Sith. They're somewhere in the middle. If you can go back to our earlier episodes with Tyler and Brian, there's a lot about that with phase 2 of the High Republic. There's a lot of cults that are on Jedha that are not Jedi or Sith, but they are force users. I like that this was an early iteration, kind of like testing the waters to see if people like that there's like other cults out there. So just a lore aspect, I thought that was fun. For Ty York herself, I like what this 4-issue run did for her. It showed that she was a lot less willing to be open to people, but Druin, how he comes in and he's super annoying to her. She finds him very annoying, does not want anything to do with him. But through those two being together, he proves himself worthy here in the end. You mentioned that he comes in and saves her, really helps save the ecosystem of the planet of Lorith.
Save the rebellion. Save the dream.
That's good. I think because of this interaction, she is a little bit more open. She has this droid KL03, and if you kind of just try to sound that out, it's like Chloe. And so I think by the end of the run, she's a little bit more open to calling the droid Chloe and willing to like humanize it a little bit. She's got more of a heart beating in her chest. And I think that shows up in the Rising Storm, that she starts at a place that is much more open than she was at issue 1 of this comic.
A little softer.
Yes, a little softer. Now,
there's even that moment in the comics where she says, I don't do nicknames. Like, stop. She's like, why are you still calling by her full name? I don't do nicknames. And then the flashbacks, you see her master calls her by her full name, Tylera. But then Claudius calls her Lyra. And for short, like a little nickname. And then that definitely signals the trauma of her past. And she says, we're just keeping this formal. There is just strictly professionalism. I don't make friends. I don't make allies, because that's how you open yourself up to getting hurt. And that's a story trope story thread that we've seen many times, not only in Star Wars, but other forms of different media. And that's one that there's a reason why we see that so often, is because it's so relatable. Like you can instantly relate to someone who's been
Yeah.
hurt either by someone, turning against them or by losing someone quickly and experiencing tragic loss and heartache. And you don't want to feel that again. So you shrink and you bring yourself in. You think you're protecting yourself, but you're actually only prolonging your suffering because you're not allowing yourself the fullness of the human experience. And I think we're seeing that with Ty, especially right here.
Yeah, absolutely. She's extremely traumatized from her experience with Callias, and so that's just on the forefront. Is like this person is trying to completely cut out emotion from her life, cut out people from her life, cut out everything. She's just trying to survive. And we'll see even later on, like Ty Yorick has another 4-issue comic run in phase 3, but like she definitely goes on a journey. I think she's going to be in this final novel for the High Republic, Trials of the Jedi. So I think we're going to get a good end to her too. But I've liked seeing that, like, there's people that come into her life. We know that from the Rising Storm, Elzar Man has an arc with her and comes alongside her, and those two have a story that intertwines. And so seeing Druin be the person he is, knowing Elzar Man the person he is, and how different they are, and the different ways that they come alongside Ty and change her, and she changes them. It's beautiful because even she gives Druin more of a backbone. She gives him more confidence to like, I'm going to emulate her and what she is hard-headed. She knows what she's doing. I need to have some of that for myself.
Right.
So I like
absolutely. That. And there's also the aspect of when you are connecting with an animal in the Force, a lot of times it's talked about in here. It's a two-way street. You have to give some of yourself up and be vulnerable to what you're connecting with. And she's always struggled with that, even back to her times as a Padawan. And in the Rising Storm, with the stuff going on the Republic Fair, we see her needing to connect with animals there. Like there's this line in the Rising Storm. Obviously, we're not talking about the Rising Storm right now, but it's, Elzar Man enters the fight flying on the back of a dragon, because who else could it be? And it's not said there that Ty Yorick is also flying around, at that time on this. It was part of her story there. And in here we see her connecting with an animal, and it's really setting us up for when she has that big moment in the Rising Storm where her and Elzar come together. She opens herself up to be able to do that and has this really vulnerable connection with Elzar. And all the seeds of that are all planted here, being vulnerable to connect with the Gretalax, being vulnerable to connect with the Spider Weavers, and being able to connect with Druin in another way. So I like how in the High Republic, especially, every single thread connects together somehow, but is loose enough to where you can have these individual stories stand on their own 2 feet.
I think that's maybe my favorite part of the High Republic publishing initiative, is that this whole thing that started in 21 is an overarching story that has been going, is going to end here this summer. But along the way, we've got all these cool 4-issue comic runs like Monster Temple Peak. It's its own story, but it absolutely feeds into the greater narrative. And that's really beautiful. That's really hard to do, especially with so many hands in the pot, so many cooks in the kitchen.
Moving parts.
Yeah, it's crazy how this has all worked, and to look back on it all kind of right now, because we're toward the end. Like, it's really cool to see that Cavan Scott was able to weave this into his own novel. He's able to weave this into the High Republic as a whole in general. So
there's just been a growing, sentiment online. I've seen this online from a few of our favorite places, and it says how the biggest lie on the internet is that reading the High Republic adult novels, like you can't just read the adult novels to understand or get the whole story of the High Republic. And I just want to push back against that quite a bit, because I think that the way they've done the High Republic is that you're able to jump in and read these stories. If you're just reading the adult novels, you are getting a cohesive story. But to me, it's the same way if someone said you can't understand the whole story of Star Wars with only watching the movies. when sure you can watch the Skywalker saga and understand this, like Star Wars, it's all the other stuff is great. It fills in gaps. And I think that we have to understand with the High Republic that these issues, can be their own thing, and that's okay, but they don't have to, and not everything has to be like this giant connecting thread of in terms of like galactic stakes. And that's what I love about the High Republic is you have, certain books, they are having these big stakes and you kind of need to follow these ones specifically. But we also have these little ones where if you don't read Monster of Temple Peak, that's really fine. You're not missing out on the larger narrative of the High Republic. But if you do get that, hard hitting, mini content. And that's what I love about the High Republic. It feels like the way Star Wars as a whole kind of functions with everything. You have like the adult novels, which are your saga films, and then you have your comics, which are like your little mini shorts and little weird Clone Wars arcs. And then you have your young adult novels, which is your big arcs of Rebels and Clone Wars. And then you have stuff like this right here. So I love this. It's just the way it all weaves together. I don't want people to think that we're having some connectivity issues today, but it's going to be okay.
I think we are. But I think that was a perfect way to put it. It's the High Republic is like a microcosm of the Star Wars experience. Because you can read the adult novels and you're getting the full story. I would say you're getting the full story. If anything, I would say if you're reading everything in the High Republic, much like you and I, you're almost getting, repeat stuff. You're getting multiple point of view on things that maybe in your mind, like, don't need that. So like, if you're reading, especially in phase 3, there's, Temptation of the Force goes over the Blight a lot. And there's also other books and there's other things that are going over the same issue. So like when I got to, that book, I was like, really, we're going over this again. We're hitting this hard in the first like 20% of this book. I feel like I already know what's going on, but
you're reading about it from a different perspective. And
right, exactly.
It's for those people that are just following singular narratives. And I love that everyone has that. So what did you think? Speaking of nicknames before, Tyorik calls the Jedi the Jays. I thought that was just interesting. She just calls them the Jays. What do you think the Jedi would think if they were known as the Jays? Is there anything interesting there?
Well, see, I don't know if you remember this. You didn't bring it up, but like the Nile absolutely call them the Jays. That's what like Lorna D calls them.
Oh my gosh.
That might just be a comic thing.
Did not even remember that.
I don't know if there's really like actual connectivity there, but it's certainly a slang word, and the Jedi don't really operate that way. They don't really accept people using slang for their order. They seem like they really hold themselves up with respect. They have a lot of ideas about who they are. So I don't think they really would like that. And I think maybe Ty has made a conscious choice to not call them the Jedi, to call them the Jays, because she is burned by them. She feels unworthy to be a Jedi. She feels like she failed maybe to be a Jedi.
Okay.
So she might not even feel worthy to say that, or she feels like she's been disrespected by the Jedi. So she doesn't want to give them that respect.
So another question for you. Tribal Balgo, the guy at the beginning who's the monster creature dealer, he looks just like Nuru Vindi from Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing they're the same species. What species is Nuru Vindi?
I'm not sure. I don't have that on lock.
What?
Nuru Vindi.
What species?
So I actually thought that it like was him, but it really isn't.
Yeah, it's not.
But it's definitely not.
I thought it was him for a moment because it's, I guess, the only creature or person of that species that we've really seen before. And or that's had a role. So I was like, oh my goodness, is this going to be Nuru Vindi? But I'm guessing that obviously this is 100-something years before Nuru Vindi's around.
I mean, yeah,
or 100 years before he is around. So I don't know if his species actually lives that long. So I'm guessing it's not him, from that perspective. But when I see that same species, I instantly go, Doctor? Are
He's
you
a
here?
Faust.
Faust.
You call him a
Okay.
Faust.
Okay. Maybe I was like, do the Gundarks, do they have some sort of like blood component that helps create the blue shadow virus that is needed for the
See,
future
I'd love
of
that. I think that'd
Dr.
be so
Newman's
funny to
work?
throw in. I think that'd
Be
be
so
so
bad.
funny. Yeah.
It would be funny.
That's good stuff.
In this, the Zepho teachings, they mentioned the Zepho, obviously a callback
Oh,
to Fallen Jedi Order or Fallen Order,
yeah.
and I haven't played Jedi Survivor, but Jedi Fallen Order I have played, and I don't know if the Zepho were playing a role in Survivor as well, but Fallen Order, we have the Zepho. So I have two questions for you. One, did you enjoy the fact we got a Zepho name drop? And two, do you think the reason why we didn't see any scenes or any moments with Ty after she kills Clyus is because it took her, as long to get out of the Zepho like temple as it took me to get out of the Zepho temple and Fallen Order?
Maybe that's why we don't see it, because it took her 3 hours of real time to just try to like navigate out of those caves, you know? I was super excited to see that
Solving the
because
puzzles.
yeah, exactly. I loved that game. I love the Zepho component where it's like he's just trying to figure out as much as he can about this ancient civilization that's super
Mhm,
mysterious. They've disappeared. They knew a lot about the Force. It was is extremely intriguing to me
mhm,
in that video game. So I love the name drop. If you'll remember, even in Bad Batch, there was like a planet they went to that seemed to have Zepho technology and this huge like monster. They did
mhm,
not name drop them in that episode, but it seems so much like it. So I like that Fallen Order Fallen Order even actually has a comic little mini run that goes with it
right.
too, where it's just and his master. So,
Okay.
um, but yeah, I love that. I love that we have kind of like an ancient civilization level to Star Wars. I like that. That's my favorite thing. That's why I love Indiana Jones. I love the ancient stuff and go find
Mhm.
out some clues from the past.
Yes. Oh man, Indiana Jones is the best. What's your is Raiders your favorite Indiana Jones movie?
So I've only seen all of them once. I can probably say I can probably say that. That was the one that was like, all right, this was so good. Like, I need to watch the next ones. But like, that's the first one. It's the best one. So
It's honestly probably one of the 5 most perfect scripts just like of all time. Is just
yeah,
perfect. It is perfection. It is absolute perfection. I love it so much. So I'm trying to see. The only other notes I have for this that I think are actually worth mentioning is Tyorg's lightsaber. She's very protective of that lightsaber. She mentions before, she's like, no one touches my lightsaber. No one. She's very protective of it. So I want to talk about that for a minute. What do you think that possessiveness comes from? Because is that the only thing she has that she really calls hers? She's clinging to the past in a way, and she's very protective of it because some people might say, like, for instance, when Ahsoka leaves the Jedi, she doesn't take her sabers with her. She leaves that behind. Ty leaves the Jedi. She's super protective of her sabers in a sense. So I'm
yeah,
curious about, we've seen Jedi before just not take their lightsabers with them when they leave the Jedi Order. So she very much takes hers, is diehard, committed to it, and will really possessive. I also want to comment on the look of her saber with the hilt
yeah,
and the 3 kind of curved spikes around it is pretty interesting. It's one of my favorite High Republic hilts. So I would say that that's another note. But last thing too, just talking about the lightsaber aspect.
yeah. I would say that that's something that she clings to. She leaves the order, but she is not considered one of the lost 20 because you have to be knighted in order to be part of the
Right.
lost 20. So she is not considered that, but she absolutely
It's a
left.
good lore drop.
She, thank you. She, the way it seems is like that is something that she clings to because that's one good thing from her teachings. Like she obviously had I'm assuming here, but she was like, found as a baby, brought to the temple, kind of like the typical Jedi
Mhm.
fashion. So she spent
Probably, yes.
what, 15, 16, 17 years
Something
learning
like
the
that.
Jedi ways. And so her being like as physically strong as she is with her
Mhm.
build, her type of like just tenacity, like it's probably the
She's
one thing
jacked.
she liked the most. Yeah, she's
Mhm.
jacked. She probably like didn't care about studies. She didn't care about meditation as much. She wanted to be in the lightsaber room, like sparring. And so
Okay.
like if she's gonna take one thing away, it's gonna be her lightsaber because she doesn't really care about the other teachings of the Jedi, and that's why
Okay.
nothing else was strong enough to keep her attached to the Order. The lightsaber is the one thing that she can use as a weapon in and of itself, while it's not even turned on. It's just got the
Mhm.
spikes that she's put on there, so it's a weapon in and of itself without having to be turned on.
That's true.
Um,
I would I wanna push back a little.
okay.
Because in the beginning of the comic, when she's sparring with Claudius, he does say, "You're too meek and, like, too mild."
Hmm.
When they're fighting, and he's kind of really headstrong. Now, granted, he's super full of himself and kind of doesn't listen to anything, so that could be him just egging her on a little bit more. But I wonder too if, because we our first intro to her in her flashback is her sparring, and so that's clearly like an important part of her life is her lightsaber sparring. I wonder if she thought she was too soft, and Claudius dies because she's too soft and not too hard on him to stop doing what he's doing. Let's get out of here. Stop messing around in this temple. Get your ass out of here. We're heading out, sort of thing. And if she had been sterner and been a little more forceful, then perhaps he wouldn't have died. And the lightsaber even is like symbolic of that, maybe, where this is a weapon first, and that's the way she looks at it. That whole "this weapon is your life" line that we get from Obi-Wan, maybe she takes that to an extreme level, and I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into the just one, but that's where I'm headed.
Yeah. That's maybe what I was trying to get at is like it's her life.
Mhm.
That's the one thing she clings to. So that's why she would take it, and she's not wearing Jedi Temple robes. She's wearing her own
Okay.
civilian uniform. She's kept nothing else of the Order, and anything else attached to it, she kind of defies. She doesn't call them Jedi. She calls them Jay. She all these different things, and so I think the lightsaber is
Yeah.
the one thing that she can use, that she wants to
Mhm.
use, that that she keeps. I think that's
Mhm.
the only thing,
Well,
and it's purple
yeah.
too. So I like that there's not actual canon lore behind colors. There's
Mhm.
legends lore behind them, but like the purple is like, it's between red and blue. She kind of balances on that line of like she's not in the Order. She's not a dark side user, but like she's somewhere in the
Mhm.
middle.
I've always been someone to roll my eye. I don't care about it at all. Bec The people with these purple lightsabers symbolically have been some of our edgier Jedi, and I don't think that is irrelevant. Like, we should just toss that aside. Like, I don't think that's nothing.
Hmm.
So I would give you that for sure. That you think of Mace Windu, you think of Tayora here. Vernestra has her purple, like, pinkish light whip, and she could
Yeah.
definitely be a bit more headstrong and intense at times. Anyone else?
Not off the top of my head.
What color's Adigalia's?
Hers is blue.
It's blue, okay. There's like a alternate, she has like a pink, someone in the prequel era has like a pinkish lightsaber, I swear, because or like there's an alternate lightsaber with them with a pinkish lightsaber, because I have an action figure from when I was a kid. It was in the box with a purple lightsaber that's not Mace Windu's with a character. But I cannot remember if it might have been some like alternate figure or something. I may
Might have
just be
been. As
completely
soon as we
derailing.
stop the stream, I'm gonna think of it, and that's gonna bug me. But I'm not sure.
Regardless, where I got it, I'm completely wrong. Who knows? But anyway, Episode 42, Timeline Show. Be looking for Cavan Scott interview in a couple of days. I'm going to go upload this right now. It'll come out Saturday afternoon around 4 o'clock Eastern time when you're listening to this. So for Light and Life, everyone, remember, we are all the Republic. We'll see you next time.